Okay, well, welcome to the Wayfinding series. Today is actually the final Wayfinding presentation for the fall semester, which has really been filled with fantastic artists and designers that have shared their path to a successful creative career. And each presentation has been really rich with great advice, real advice from real creatives, as we say. I'm especially excited to wrap up the semester with my fellow artist and studio mate, Monique Crine. And before I tell you a bit more about Monique, I just want to make a note about kind of the programming today. So we won't have a formal Q&A kind of session at the end of the talk, but Monique has kindly offered to stick around after her presentation. So take advantage of this and be sure to, if your schedule allows, hang out after her talk and introduce yourself, okay? So Monique Crine earned her BA from San Francisco State University and her MFA from Cornell University. Before pursuing painting, Monique worked for some of the world's most prestigious auction houses, including Sothebys. She left the auction world to run a gallery in Laguna Beach, California, and after promoting other artists' work for a number of years, she chose to direct her focus on her own artistic endeavors. Working from her own photographs, Monique creates arresting paintings that explore various American archetypes. For her most recent series, she focused on the professional football player, creating both heroic and tragic representations of these literally larger-than-life figures. The drama of her paintings is inspired by the classic cinematic Hollywood spectacles of the mid-20th century and transforms individual players into theatrical characters and highlights how our perceptions of celebrity frequently blurs the boundary between reality and fantasy. Monique is the recipient of many awards, including the Pollock-Krasner Foundation grant. She's exhibited across North America, including solo shows in New York, California, and of course, Colorado. She's currently working on a retrospective on the life of Coach Bill McCartney with the University of Colorado Boulder, and occasionally making paintings of dogs for her friends. Please welcome Monique Crine.
Wow. Thank you, guys. I've been asked to come here today to describe my professional journey, essentially how I got to where I am now, and give you advice throughout based on the experiences I've had. So as Gretchen had described, I'm a full-time artist, which is something I never thought I'd be able to do. I lecture twice a year at Harvard University. Again, something I never thought I would do. And in the summers, I teach in a castle in the south of France. I am like so lucky. And I was able to do that because I worked really hard. And what I hope through this presentation is to show you that I was in the same position you guys are in now. And it sounds so cheesy, but like truly through hard work and not accepting no, you guys can like really do amazing things. So to get going, 20 years ago, I was an undergrad at San Francisco State, and I was a sculpture and art history major. This is one of my really beautiful sculptures. They got even better when I added poetry to them. But I mean, I thought I was pretty fantastic. But despite what you see here, I really didn't feel like I had found my voice as an artist. It wasn't until I actually moved into a crack house in San Francisco and subsequently had to move to the East Bay that I came across a junior college where I was able to take a painting class. At my university, I went to San Francisco State, we had Robert Bechtel that taught there. And if anybody knows about painting, especially like Bay Area photorealism, he was like the king. And so it was impossible to take painting classes at my school, even though I loved painting so much, which is why I ended up with naked ladies on cherries. So I was able to take a class at the local community college, and I met a professor who I fell in love with. And we spoke the same language. I don't know if you guys have had faculty at this school, but you meet that one person that like believes in you, and it comes together. So I'm gonna show you two of my paintings at that time. This is actually my third oil painting, which is, I mean, it's not bad. And then the one next to it is my fourth. But really, if you get a faculty member that you can work with that believes in you, and like you truly like listen to the advice they have to give you, it's incredible how you can develop, because your teachers really do care about you. So this is essentially where I peaked in terms of my undergrad production. I feel like it would be a wasted opportunity not to actually just share with you guys the practical side of being an artist in terms of what jobs I had to get and what I had to do to pay my bills. I didn't have a trust fund, and I didn't have parents that could afford to pay for me to live in San Francisco. So I took advantage while I was still in college of doing internships. What's great about internships, it's an opportunity to kind of like date different careers. You can see what you like and what you don't like. And if you don't like it, you're just there for a semester or for a month or for whatever period of time you agree upon ahead of time, but you can try so many different things. The first place I interned was at the Chinese Culture Center in San Francisco, and I worked as assistant to the curator. What was incredible about this opportunity is I was able to go with her and do studio visits with different artists. And I was able to see how a professional artist was able to run their essentially their own like small business. I was able to work on the catalogs. I was able to see how a curator curates a show. So it was a really, I mean, it was a fantastic experience to have outside of my own education at the university. From there, I applied for an internships at Bonhams and Butterfields. Bonhams is the third largest auction house in the world, really, and I did public relations. And what was fantastic about this is I got to work with the different department heads to work on their specific auction highlights. I actually got to hold Picassos, which, I mean, they would probably die if I admitted that now because you're not supposed to, but like I got to hold like the Picasso sculptures and like actually inspect them and see them and understand from the directors why they were important, why they're valuable. And to be able to see the work in person was, I mean, that's invaluable. A highlight, I have two highlights from when I worked there. Does anyone know the artist Wayne Thiebaud? He's a pretty prominent kind of like, what would you say, pop era painter, right? Kind of, yeah. But he does paintings of like cakes and sweets and stuff, and they sell for like millions and millions of dollars. We had one that we didn't know where the provenance was, which means we didn't know where the painting came from. So Wayne actually came down from Sacramento to authenticate the painting, and we got to meet him. And it was like, as a young painter, it's like gunk, gunk, gunk. And then one of our auctioneers had this husband who was like an aspiring comedian named Will Ferrell, which was very, very cool. So, but he's done really well, from what I understand. Right? I think he's, yeah. I don't know. From there, I went on to Sothebys, which was pretty fantastic. I mean, it was a joke. I worked in their trust and estate office in San Francisco, and I was in charge of managing the exhibition highlights that went from city to city. I was also a part of the appraisal team, which is unbelievable to actually be able to see like Jackie Collins jewelry or Danielle Steele. Like they come in with these boxes of just, it looks like costume jewelry, but it's real. And so to be able to have that hands-on experience of seeing these different invaluable pieces from different estates was so, so incredible. But keep in mind where I'm at. I'm in San Francisco. And while it's a beautiful place to be, and there's these incredible opportunities, like working for Bonhams and Sothebys and all the various cultural resources that I'm so excited about, it's really expensive. And at the time, it was in the early 2000s, you know, because of the .com era, it's up and down and up and down. And when it was down, all non-essential personnel were let go. But then once it got better, we'd get hired again. And then we get on. So I can actually attest to making a very good latte at Starbucks, because in between getting fired and rehired, that's where I worked. I eventually went on, because I couldn't handle the instability. I moved to Southern California, and I ran a gallery in Laguna Beach, which was awesome. I mean, I looked at the beach every day. When we had big clients come in, we drank wine and looked at art, and they bought a bunch. The one day I did not dress up for work. I was literally like in my painting clothes, because we all have those days, right? Where you just like, I cannot pull it together. This handsome man comes in, Pierce Brosnan, with his wife. And I was like, yeah. Sorry, Of course. I had Radiohead playing in a plein air gallery. Like, it was the worst scenario. So the small lesson from that is just always be professional when you go to work, because you never know. So I loved doing this. Like, I loved supporting other artists. I loved getting to know all these people, but ultimately, I wasn't nurturing my own creative endeavors. And I was worried that if I didn't give myself a chance, I would look back later in life and regret not having tried. But Southern California, compared to San Francisco, was less expensive, but it's still very expensive. And I couldn't afford to be an artist in Southern California. And so I moved to Colorado, which was affordable at the time. And I got a job at a bank, the former Washington Mutual. And I made art in the evenings and on the weekends. And it was around the time of the Iraq War. And as an artist, I don't know if you guys are feeling this now, how do you negotiate what's going on politically? How do you negotiate what's going on environmentally? And for me, I started digesting the images I was seeing in the media through my paintings, quite literally. So I would spend hours watching beheading videos, and I would do paintings of stills from the beheading videos. This is a painting of Nick Berg. So there are multiples of these. I think you get the point, so I don't need to show thousands. This is Jack Hansley. And these paintings are all quite small. So what I did is, for the exhibition, there were about 50 small paintings that were all 12 by 12 that kind of went around like a film reel. And then here's a painting of an insurgent. So this is ultimately the work that I was able to get into grad school with, which is fabulous, but as you'll hear later, it's a little misleading about ultimately kind of who I am and the work that I do. But I got into Cornell, which was fantastic, and the advice I received before I got into graduate school was from a professor who actually teaches at Albuquerque, who's a well-known photographer from the 80s. But she said, "What do you want to do when you're done with your degree?" I was like, "Well, I want to teach at a university. Like, that's my dream. I want to be a painting professor." She's like, "Well, how much money do you think we make?" I was like, "I mean, like 100, 200, like I don't even know." Like, you just don't even think about what it looks like. She's like, "Monique, I make," keep in mind, like, I mean, she's done very well for herself professionally, but she's like, "I make $56,000 a year." So at $56,000 a year, like, think about how you can pay back your student loans. Because I had gotten into some pretty fantastic programs for grad school, but then I'm looking at possibly being $150,000 to $200,000 in debt. So I chose Cornell because they offered me a full ride. And while it's a great school, it wasn't necessarily the best fit for me. But that's where I ended up. And when I was there, I struggled because I'm not, based on that work, they thought I was a very conceptual artist. And they thought I was hyper political. And I'm like, I'm not. Like, I'm not as cool as they thought I was. Like, I have hot pink nails. Like, I wear a blazer, and I literally go to the salon and ask to look like Nora O'Donnell. Like, I am like the farthest thing from awesome. And so I struggled. Like, my first year was brutal. But I had, again, comes back to your faculty are your lifeline to your everything. I had a professor who said to me, like, "Monique, truly, like, what makes your story different? Your personal story different? Like, what makes you unique? What can you say through your art that other people can't?" And the first thing that came to me was my family. My mom is an addict and kind of a former catalog model, and I went home to start photographing her. My grandfather was a press photographer during the Kennedy administration, and so my first understanding of art was photography. So I actually inherited his cameras, and I began photographing my mom at her home. So here's here, and there's that one. But for me, like, the photographs weren't enough. They were too immediate, and I wanted that story to feel more ongoing. I wanted to be more theatrical, so I began to paint her. So this painting, it looks small here, it's 6 by 10 feet, so it's quite cinematic. And I was looking to movies that she grew up with to inspire these shots. So I was looking at films from like the 1930s to 1950s, where the way, like, it was the way that the women were portrayed, that influenced her way or her perspective on, like, gender and on behavior. And here's a painting of my grandmother, also the same size. And then to give you an idea of scale, they're quite big. So here's Betty Davis, by the way, best ever. If you guys haven't watched her films, watch all of them. Go home tonight, binge, so good. So here's the films that quite literally my mom grew up with. And they're these very melodramatic women. And that's how, when you're around these women, my mother and the extended family, how they all behave. Here's a self-portrait, also at that same scale. This one of Cheryl. It's about twice that size. Antonioni, if you've ever had a chance to watch his films, then you understand like the beauty that resonates from his work. He felt that women were vehicles for pure emotion. So that was really captivating for me, and then in documenting these women that I was working with. And then kind of one last to show you an example from this series. So this is kind of where grad school wraps up. And like, what do? You have this incredible degree from an Ivy League university, and now you have to get a job. Like, and ignorantly, I thought, well, I can just go apply for teaching positions and I can get them. And they're really hard to get. So if people here have ambitions of becoming, an educator, talk to, again, your faculty, your support system, and they'll tell you it's a challenge. I received lots of interviews at different places, but ultimately I ended up taking a job in Colorado selling audio connectors for an Australian firm. So I was in the rock and roll business, but like the less sexy side. I was really excited when they hooked me up to this mic because I was like, ooh, is that one of our connectors? It's not. It's totally generic. I wouldn't buy it. But that's the reality is, you finish with your degree and you have to get a job. And sometimes your job isn't your dream job, and that's fine because you have plenty of time. And I graduated and I'm thinking, oh, God. But it's okay because getting this job, it afforded me the income to get a house where I had a studio at home. I had the space for a studio. I could pay back I had to take out a small student loan. I could pay back that student loan. I could afford to do that. I had health insurance. And I could afford to travel to kind of make the work that I wanted to make. So when I moved back to Colorado, I wanted to work with something distinctly American, distinctly Western. So I actually ran a Craigslist ad saying Marlboro Man Wanted. I got some extremely questionable emails back, but one of the less offensive ones was from this gentleman named Tony James, and he was a soldier who had just returned from Iraq. He'd been shot in the chest and was recovering. He was the one that he sniffs out all the IUDs, and the photograph he sent me, I need to find it. He was larger than life in this photograph. Like, I mean, he just had this charisma and this energy. And so I went to meet him at the Broadmoor to go shooting. I have some guns for my dad because I grew up in a military family. So we went to go shooting up in the mountains. And he hops out of his enormous truck with like the Confederate flag. And he gets down and he is up to here on me. Like, I am a small person and he is a smaller person. But he's just got like that Tom Cruise big head, little body. And so we worked together creating these images that were kind of reminiscent of like old Hollywood Westerns. So here's HUD here, and you can see that kind of bleached out lighting. These two paintings here actually are owned by Google, which is kind of awesome. So just looking at like the lighting from Cool Hand Luke. This is Cockgun. He actually doesn't wear underwear because he's a man. And his pants split, and so it was a full show while we were up at the mountains. And then here's one final painting of him. Something that's been really fantastic about being an artist is you get this free pass to kind of do whatever you want. And I kind of feel like that exists in life in general, but as an artist, people are intrigued when you want to tell their story. And so I was able to actually work with the NFL doing portraits of players that were retiring early due to injury. Some, that were head injuries, some were just bodily injuries. So I started out with this gentleman named Jake Ballard, and I thought it would be interesting for you guys to actually see what the process looks like. Not glamorous, obviously, but you can see, he truly is this like American gladiator. If you can see how tall he is sitting down, it is really not that much. He's massive, massive, and couldn't be kinder. And when I went into this project, I wanted to document them as being sad, as failures, as suffering. Like I wanted these really melodramatic portraits, but they were filled with such optimism about the future. They were so hopeful. They were so emotionally strong, and that was something I was not prepared for. And that was really at the time that I was doing this when all the sexual assault stuff was going on. And so I was really expecting drama, and I was going to bring it. And instead I got really kind, respectful gentlemen that, just got essentially they got hurt and they just have to do something else. And if someone told me that I couldn't make art anymore, which is essentially the equivalent of what happened to them, like they can't play football anymore, like I would have been devastated, like crushed to the core. And these guys were like, well, no, that's not what, in some cases, that's not what God wanted for me. That's not what I was meant to be. Like, there are bigger things out there than football. And it was the most humbling project. So here's me photographing Jake again. You'll see the painting that resulted from this shoot in a second. I also got the opportunity to go up and photograph the Chicago Bears, which was really cool. A small anecdote, and if you're as vain as I am, maybe you'll appreciate this. I was dressing for warmth. And I got invited to the box of Richard Dent, he was a big Chicago Bear player, when I was done photographing the team. And you go up and you go into the box, and the women are dressed to the nines. I mean, they have like leather high heel like boots like up to their thighs. Like they are done up and they are sexy and they are gorgeous. And I am wearing, I'm not kidding you, that mom I showed you, like her old Nikes. I'm wearing like jeans that are like baggy boot cut, bad boot cut, like not sexy boot cut, bad boot cut. And then like this Eddie Bauer sweater, like minimal makeup, because I was not expecting to, oh, have I learned? Again, always be prepared for that. Even if you look stupid on the field, like, pray be professional. I mean, it always happens to me. So here's one of my paintings. That's of Jake. The actual painting itself is right about that size. And these were all shown at the MCA. This is about, I think it's like 7 by 10, something like that. There I am looking super adorable with my goddaughter. And then to give you an idea of scale of the painting. That painting is the same size as the previous one. So what we did is we photographed these guys in their place of domestic comfort. I wanted them to feel at home. I wanted them to kind of return to their home, like as part of like their, lack of a better description, healing. And we wanted them to just essentially, it's like documentary fiction. It's them acting as themselves. That kind of wraps up that. But believe it or not, I thought I was going to hit the cash cow with those football players. But football players are given things. They do not necessarily buy art. It's becoming more popular with like the NBA. They're creating a culture of art collectors. But in football, if they have a nice car, generally they're given that car. A lot of their clothes, they're given those clothes. And so I was kind of expecting them all kind of to buy their own paintings, or, you have this idea of what it looks like, and it's different. So I thought that was going to be the career maker and I would be able to live off my art, and that wasn't the case. So around the same time, my sister had a little girl after a lot of trying, and she asked me to make a painting of 2 dogs to go above her crib. I was like, all right, I'll do this for you, but don't show anyone. So I made paintings of dogs to go above the crib. Super cute, right? Well, a couple people saw it and they're like, can you paint my dog too? And I was like, oh, no. I work with the NFL. I teach at Harvard. Like, I don't paint dogs. But then I was like, okay. One of my good girlfriends just like, please, Monique, because her dog was getting sick. And I was like, all right, I'll paint your dog. Do not tell anyone. Well, someone else saw it. And then word went around. I painted another dog. And I kind of realized that, well, it was my husband that kind of was like, so you're still selling connectors. You could be making the same amount being in your studio all day painting. Yeah, they're dogs, and sometimes the occasional kid, but you could be doing this full time. And so I was able to quit my job and make art full time painting dogs. Oh, there's another dog that's 5 by 5 feet. There's another guy, also 5 by 5 feet. There's another one. So, like my idea of what I thought my artistic practice would look like has really changed. And now it's a matter of how can I pay my bills, and what creates the most like internal happiness. And you know, like, this is a lot more fun than selling audio connectors, a lot more fun. And it actually improves my skills when it comes to working on other paintings. Like, I'm a lot faster at painting. So it's not this idea I had. It's not this kind of pure artist that's just making whatever work. But if I was that pure artist, like, I couldn't pay my rent. I'd probably be living in my parents' basement, which is nice, but like super depressing. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And I'm teaching here in the summers, which is, I mean, it's okay. Like, painting dogs, teaching painting here in the summer is like not bad. Then a couple times a year, I get to go to Harvard, which is majorly intimidating, by the way. Like, full disclosure, I took a sedative the first time I went there because I was afraid of having a panic attack. And I have the cutest kid ever, so I had to, you know, you have to put him in there somewhere. But this is, you know, this takes over priority. Do you guys like baseball at all? Rockies? So this is Nolan Arenado, and this is Charlie Blackman. I have 3 other pets, but I didn't want to show you those because then I'd look crazy. So in terms of advice, I'm supposed to give you guys advice. I feel like it was kind of sprinkled in here a little bit. But the first thing is, don't be an asshole. Truly. What? Yeah, like this remote. You guys build a community here. Like, maintain these relationships. The faculty here are your support system. When you graduate in 3 years and you need a letter of recommendation and you haven't maintained touch with your favorite teacher, they're gonna be like, I don't really remember her. Stay in touch with everybody. Stay in touch with your peers. In the future, you guys are gonna help each other out with your careers. You're gonna help each other out with opportunities. You know, and then you in turn, I mean, someone's gonna help you, you in turn are gonna help them. The only reason why I have Harvard is because I wasn't an asshole. I'm an okay painter, but ultimately it comes down to being kind to people and maintaining those relationships. I cannot stress that enough. Because if you're a jerk and you upset the wrong person, I mean, that can seriously impact your career and your opportunities. So don't be a dick. Oh, I don't want to get to that yet. I talked about debt. Debt sucks. I don't know how it is for you guys now, but when I was in school, I know student loans are hard now because tuition is so expensive. But as much as you can minimize it, try. Even if it means getting a part-time job. If you guys have work kind of programs here or whatever else, take advantage of that. Because essentially for every $20,000 you take out, that's $200 a month you have to pay back once you graduate. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it adds up. You know, a girlfriend of mine, she got a photography degree, and she got it from a school downtown, and she has $180,000 in student loans. And she's a photographer, which is fabulous, but photographers cannot make enough money to pay back $1,800 in student loans payments a month. So be mindful of that. And you know, it's not the sexy thing to talk about, but let's be real. Internships, I touched on that. They're the best. You guys have incredible resources here. Whether that's like the MCA, the Denver Art Museum, you have various designers in town. There's different production houses. You have Blueprint, which is here. I mean, the founder of Fixer Upper, that Joanna Gaines thing, like he lives here. Like there's so many talented and incredible people that live here that you guys really need to take advantage of those resources. And start now. Like a semester, every semester go somewhere different, because you're also building relationships for when you graduate. Those people will help you get a job if you are nice to them and if you're kind to them. You don't have to be perfect, but they want to help people out too. They want to mentor someone because it makes them feel good about themselves that they're able to pass along what they've learned. Volunteer. If you can't get an internship, then just volunteer. As time passes and you've gained experience, join boards. It's incredible to be able to see how small nonprofits are run, or even for-profits. Apply to everything. When I was at Cornell, I was a finalist for a Fulbright, which is ridiculous because I think I'm awesome, but I am not that awesome. And the only reason why I didn't get that Fulbright is because my plan for the year was too ambitious. There are countries where only 3 people apply. 3 people. You guys can seriously, take advantage of that. What it is, the Fulbright is, it's a US government program where they will send you overseas for a year to do any kind of research you want. They will pay for the entire thing. If you're married, they will pay for your spouse to go over. If you have a kid, they will pay for you, your spouse, and your kid to go over for a year. It is an incredible program, and it is really underutilized. And the only schools that really push this are like Cornell, like those Ivy League schools, but anyone from any university can apply, and you can apply your senior year. I really encourage you to do it. I didn't end up reapplying because I married a Canadian. It was a terrible mistake. Grant, we're not married anymore. It's just, we all make mistakes, right? Highs and lows. Paula Krasner Foundation, I got that grant. It rocked. They gave it to me because I wrote to them because of the house that I was renting in the Highlands didn't have good ventilation. And I said that I needed an art studio in which to practice. This is 2 years after I got my master's. I wasn't that old. I wasn't that established. They sent me an unbelievable check so that I could get a studio space outside of my own home. These things are available, and you just have to apply. They are not awarding the top tier artists. They're applying they're giving grants to just everyday people. So it is worth applying to. Wheel of Fortune. You can even apply to be on Wheel of Fortune. You think I'm kidding? That is me that's me with the extensions. I was really proud of those. They were very expensive. I literally spent all of the money that they gave me to get out there on hair. What I'm trying to tell you is there's so many things that are possible. You just have to go for it. The only reason why I was able to do all these things is because you kind of take a chance in yourself and you have to believe in yourself. It's all those cheesy things that people tell you, but they're true. That's it.
We actually are lucky enough to have time for a couple of questions, if there are any. Otherwise, we can ask questions. Okay. No, I don't see any hands jumping up, so I'll let you guys. I'll talk to Monique afterwards. But before everyone goes, I want to remind you about the Wayfinding series coming up. So of course this is the last one for the fall semester, but we have a ton of great new artists and designers that will be on campus in the spring semester. We're going to kick it off actually with a group of our own faculty and staff. Rob Fladry is going to be leading a panel discussion. Everyone look at Rob. On January 16th about collaborating in the studio. Other star faculty members joining him are going to be our very own Tobias Fike, Matt Harris, Jim Ryman, and Jay Hollick are all going to be on that panel. So that'll be a really fun way to get back into it. Thanks for being here today. Let's give it up to Monique one more time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good break.